The dining room at my parents' house in Colorado Springs was exactly as I remembered. Too formal, too cold, too much like a museum exhibit of what a perfect family should look like. Crystal chandelier, antique sideboard, china that cost more than most people's monthly rent. I sat at my assigned seat, the one farthest from the head of the table, and watched my family perform their annual Thanksgiving ritual off pretending we liked each other. Ms. Sister Victoria sat at Mom's right hand, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against her wine glass as she surveyed the table like a queen assessing her subjects. She was 35, 3 years older than, and had spent our entire lives making sure everyone knew she was the favorite. So, Victoria said, cutting into her turkey with unnecessary precision, I had coffee with the estate attorney last week. Here we go. It hot, taking another bite of sweet potatoes. I'd known this was coming. Victoria had been dropping hints for weeks in the family group chat, the one I'd muted 2 years ago. Oh, Mom said, her voice dripping with that fake casual tone she used when something was clearly scripted. What did he say? Well, Victoria said, setting down her knife and fork to give this announcement the dramatic weight she thought it deserved. We finalized Mom and Dad's. Everything's been updated and properly documented. My younger brother Jason, who was 28 and spent most family gatherings on his phone, actually looped up. Everything? Everything. Victoria confirmed, smiling. The house, Dad's accounting firm, the 6 rental properties in Denver, Mom's investment portfolio. All properly allocated. I kept eating. The turkey was dry as salways. Mom had never mastered the art of cooking poultry, but no one was allowed to say that out loud. And Jason pressed. What's the split? Victoria's smile widened. This was the moment she'd been waiting for. Well, as the eldest and the one who's been most involved in family business matters, I'll bear receiving the primary inheritance, the firm, the house, 4 of the 6 rental properties. Jason's face fell.
For what about me?
You'll receive the remaining 2 rental properties, Victoria said, her tone suggesting she was being incredibly generous. They're quite valuable. You should be grateful. I am grateful, Jason said quickly, glancing at Dad for approval. Thank you. Then Victoria turned to me, her expression shifting to something between pity and triumph. Sage, I know this might be difficult to hear, but you're not mentioned in the will at all. I paused me fork halfway to my mouth and looked at her. Okay. Victoria repeated, clearly disappointed by my lack of reaction. That's all you have to say? I shrugged. What would you like me to say? Well, I thought you might be upset, she said. Or, at least surprised. Mom and Dad have decided that since you moved away to Portland and haven't been involved in the family business, it doesn't make sense to include you in the estate distribution. That's their choice, I said, simply returning to my meal. The table fell silent. This wasn't going according to Victoria's script. She'd clearly expected tears or anger or some kind of emotional breakdown that would allow her to play the magnanimous older sister, offering comfort. Dad cleared his throat. Sage, you understand why we made this decision, don't you? You left Colorado. You chose a different path. Victoria stayed, worked in the firm, invested in the family. I understand, I said, and I did. I understood perfectly. I'd understood since I was 15 years old and overheard Dad telling his business partner that daughters were expensive liabilities who'd just get married and take someone else's name anyway. I understood when I graduated top of my class, and Dad asked why I'd wasted his money on a college degree instead of getting married. I'd understood when I started my own architectural firm in Portland, and Mom asked when I was going to give up my little hobby and come home. You're taking this remarkably well, Mom said suspiciously. I expected more resistance. Why would I resist? I asked. It's your estate. You can do whatever you want with it. Victoria leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. Unless you're planning to contest it. Is that it? Are you going to drag this family through some ugly legal battle? No, I said honestly. I'm not. Good, Dad said, relief evident in his voice, because the will is ironclad. We've made sure of that. Robert Henderson drew it up himself. He's the best estate attorney in Colorado. I know, I said. He handled Grandma's estate, too. The mention of my grandmother seemed to cast a pall over the table. Grandma Catherine had passed away 18 months ago, and her death had hit me harder than anyone in me family could understand. She'd been the only one who'd ever really seen me, the only one who'd encouraged my dreams instead of trying to reshape them into something more acceptable. Yes, well, Mom said stiffly. Your grandmother had her own ideas about things. She certainly did, I agreed, unable to keep the smile from my face. Victoria's eyes flashed. What's that supposed to mean?
Nothing, I said.
Just that Grandma was always very clear about what she wanted. She was senile at the end, Dad said dismissively. Couldn't tell Tuesday from Thursday. I set down my fork carefully, fighting the urge to correct him. Grandma Catherine had been sharp as Satak until the day she died. I knew because I talked to her 3 times a week for the last 5 years of her life, but my family didn't know that. They assumed my absence from Colorado meant absence from Grandma's life, too. They'd been wrong about a lot of things. So, Sage, Dad said, shifting the conversation with the subtlety of a bulldozer. Where are you living these days? Still in that apartment in Portland. I took a sip of water, considering my answer. I could keep playing along, let them continue with their assumptions. Or I could tell the truth and watch everything implode. The old sage, the one who'd spent her childhood trying to earn their approval, would have stayed quiet, would have let Victoria have her moment, would have gone back to Portland and continued building her life in peace. But sitting at this table, watching my sister gloat about an inheritance she hadn't earned, listening to my parents pat themselves in the back for cutting me out so neatly, I realized I was done protecting their feelings at the expense of my own truth. Actually, I said, setting down my water glass. I'm living in Grandma's estate, the one she deeded to me. The silence that followed was absolute. Dad's fork hit his plate with a clatter that seemed thunderous in the quiet room. Mom's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. Jason's mouth literally fell open. And Victoria. Victoria went completely still, her face draining off color. What? Dad finally managed Grandma's estate. I repeated calmly. The 6-bedroom house in Evergreen with the 23 acres. The one she bought in 1987 and renovated 3 times over the years. She deeded it to me in April of 2023, 14 months before she passed away. That's impossible, Victoria said, her voice shaking. That house is worth $3.2 million, I finished. According to the most recent appraisal, though the property value has probably increased since then, the Evergreen market has been strong. Mom found her voice. Though it came out as barely more than a whisper. Catherine wouldn't have done that without telling us. She did tell you, I corrected gently. She told you at Easter dinner 2 years ago that she'd made arrangements for the estate. You all assumed she meant it would be divided between her children, Dad and Aunt Linda. You never asked for specifics. Dad's face had gone from Polito red. She had no right to give away that property without discussing it with him. I'm her son. She had every right. I said it was her property purchased with her own money from the sale of the business she built after Grandpa died. She could do whatever she wanted with it. But why you? Victoria demanded, her carefully composed mask finally cracking. Why not me? I'm the eldest grandchild. I stayed in Colorado. I actually spent time with her. You visited her twice a year, I interrupted quietly. Christmas and her birthday. You'd stay for 2 hours, drink her expensive tea, and leave. I talked to her 3 times a week on the phone. I flew in every other month to help her with projects around the house. I was there when she had pneumonia and needed someone to drive her to appointments. I was there when the pipes burst, and Shen helped coordinating repairs. We didn't know, Mom protested weakly. You didn't ask, I replied. Just like you didn't ask what I was building in Portland. Just like you didn't ask how my firm was doing. You assumed because I left Colorado that I'd left the family, but I didn't leave the family. I left you. The distinction hung in the air like smoke. This is ridiculous, Dad said, recovering some of his bluster. Even if Catherine did deed you the house, which I'll need to verify, she wasn't in her right mind. We can contest it on grounds of diminished capacity. I pulled out my phone and opened my email app. You can try, but you'll lose. Grandma had her attorney document everything meticulously. She underwent a full cognitive evaluation by Dr. Patricia Steinberg, one of the leading neurologists in Colorado. Dr. Steinberg certified that Grandma was of completely sound mind and fully understood the legal implications of her decisions. I scrolled to another email. She also had her financial advisor Marcus Chin document that she understood the full value of the property and was making this decision free of any duress or undue influence. And she video recorded her statement of intent explaining exactly why she was deeding the proper title to me and not to anyone else. Why? Victoria asked, and for the first time, she sounded less angry and more genuinely hurt. Why did she cut us out? I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw something I'd never noticed before. Behind all the entitled behavior and the golden child performance, there was a person who'd never learned that love couldn't be inherited, like furniture or real estate. She'd spent her whole life playing the role our parents created for her, and she genuinely couldn't understand why that wasn't enough. She didn't cut you out, Victoria, I said quietly. She chose me, there's a difference. And she chose me because I was the only one who loved her for who she was, not what she had. That's not fair, Mom said. We all loved Catherine.
Did you? I asked.
Because from where I sat, you loved the idea of her estate being divided among you eventually. You loved that she had money you could count on as a safety net. You loved that she made you look good at the country club. But did you love her? How dare you? Dad started. But I cut him off. I dare because it's true and you know it. Grandma knew it too. That is why she spent the last 5 years of her life making sure the one person who actually cared about her would be taken care of. Not because I needed the money and my firm does just fine.
Thank you.
But because she wanted me to have a piece of her legacy, the home she built, the land she loved, the place where she felt most herself. I stood up, pulling my coat from the back of my chair. I came to Thanksgiving because I thought maybe, just maybe, you'd treat me like family for once. But you couldn't even make it through dinner without making it clear that I'm only valuable if I play by your rules and stay in my assigned role. Sage, sit down. Dad commanded. We're not finished discussing this, yes?
We are, I said.
You finished it when you drew up a will that excluded me entirely. You just didn't expect me to have my own foundation to stand on. The state, Victoria said suddenly, her business mind clearly working through implications. What else did she give you? I paused at the doorway. I could leave now, let them wonder, or I could finish this conversation once and for all.
The house and land, I said.
Her investment portfolio worth about $1.88 million, her collection of first edition books, which she knew I'd actually read and appreciate, and her shares in the family business that Grandpa founded. Dad's face went white. What shares? That business was sold in 1995. Some of it was, I agreed, but Grandma retained a 30% ownership stake in intellectual property rights. Those rights generate about $75,000 annually in licensing fees. She transferred them to me in a separate trust. I watched the math happen in my father's eyes. The house, the land, the investment portfolio, the IP rights. Grandma had given me well over $5 million in assets, more than his entire estate was worth, more than he'd ever given me in my entire life. You manipulated her, Victoria said, her voice sharp with desperation. You isolated her from the family and convinced her to give you everything. I loved her. I said simply, that's all I ever did. I called her Tosk about her day. I listened to her stories about growing up during the Depression. I helped her plant her vegetable garden every spring. I sat with her while she watched her favorite old movies. I didn't do it for money or property. I did it because she was my grandmother and I loved her. Then why did you accept the estate? Mom demanded. If you weren't after her money, why take it? Because she asked me to, I said, because in her last months, she told Mesh wanted me to have a place that felt like home. She said, Sage, you've been searching for where you belong your whole life. Let me give you somewhere that's completely yours. No conditions, no expectations, no one to tell you you're not enough. How could I refuse that? Tears were running down my face now, but I didn't bother to wipe them away. You want to know the saddest part? She hoped that deeding me the estate would be a wake-up call for all of you. She thought maybe if you saw that she valued me, You'd start to value me too, but even now, even hearing all this, you're not seeing me. You're just seeing what I have that you wanted. Jason spoke for the first time since the revelation. Sage, I'm sorry. We've been reality to you. I looked at my younger brother, the one who'd always been caught in the middle. Never quite golden enough for Victoria's spotlight. Never quite rebellious enough to be interesting.
Thank you, Jason.
That actually means something. Don't apologize to her, Victoria snapped. She doesn't deserve it. She snuck around behind our backs, poisoned Grandma against us. I did no such thing, I said firmly. Every single conversation I had with Grandma, you encouraged her to reach out to you. I suggested she invite you over more often. I even offered to coordinate a family vacation where we could all spend time together. He tried, Victoria. Had tried so hard, but you were always too busy with your own life to make time for hers. That's not true, Victoria protested. But her voice lacked conviction, isn't it? I pulled out my phone again and opened my photos. Thesis Grandma's calendar from the last year off her life. He kept it meticulously. See all these entries? Called Victoria. No answer. Invited Victoria to lunch. She can led. Sent Victoria birthday present. No thank you call. She tried 17 times in 12 months to connect with you. You responded to 4. I showed them the calendar, watching their faces as they saw the evidence of their neglect documented in their grandmother's careful handwriting. I have a demanding career, Victoria said weakly. So do I replied. But I made time. That's the difference. Dad pushed back from the table, his chair scraping harshly against the hardwood floor. This is unacceptable. I'm calling Robert Henderson first thing Monday morning. We'll have the deed transfer investigated for any irregularities. Do what you need to do, I said tiredly, but it won't change anything. Grandma Saturny is Sharon Martinez, not Robert Henderson. She doesn't work for you or take golf trips with you or owe you any favors. And everything is completely legal and documented. You'll waste money in legal fees and end up exactly where you started. Why did she use a different attorney? Mom asked. Because she knew you'd try exactly this, I said. She knew you'd assume you could pressure or influence whoever handled her estate. So, she went to someone outside your circle, someone who'd follow her wishes exactly, regardless of family pressure. The fight seemed to drain out of the room. Victoria slumped in her chair. Dad stood frozen by the table. Mom stared into her wine glass like it held answers. What happens now? Jason asked quietly. Now, I said, I go home to my home, the one Grandma gave me, and you all continue with whatever you were planning. Your will stands as written. I'm not contesting it because I don't need to. I'm not filing any legal challenges to your estate plans because honestly, I don't care. You've already given me the only thing that mattered. Proof that my worth to you can be written out with a few legal documents. Sage, don't be dramatic, Mom said. We're still your family. Are you? I asked, because family doesn't announce Simeon's exclusion from a will at Thanksgiving dinner like it's a victory. Family doesn't smirk when someone else is being cut out. Family doesn't spend 32 years making someone feel like theory not enough. I grabbed my purse and walked toward the front door. Behind, I heard chairs scraping, footsteps following. Sage. Wait, Dad called. It turned. He stood in the hallway looking older than I'd ever seen him look. For a moment, just a moment, I saw something in his face that might have been regret. What? I asked. The estate, he said. Catherine's estate. Are you happy there? The question surprised me. Of all the things I'd expected him to ask about the property value, the legal documentation, the financial implications, this wasn't it. Yes, I said. Honestly, I'm happier there than I've been anywhere in my life. I wake up to mountain views. I have a garden where I grow tomatoes and herbs. I've turned the guest house into my home office. Andy can design houses from my grandmother's house. It's perfect. Something shifted in his expression. She always loved that place. I know, I said. She told me. She said it was the first place she'd ever lived where she felt completely herself, where she didn't have to perform or pretend or shrink herself to fit someone else's expectations. Dad nodded slowly. I never understood that about her. She always seemed so confident.
She was confident, I said.
But confidence and comfort the same thing. She built that confidence by creating a space where she could be authentic. And then she gave Medhat same gift. We stood there for a long moment, father and daughter, strangers in the same family. I'm sorry, he said finally. I'm sorry we made you feel like you weren't enough. You are enough. You always were. We couldn't see it. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to throw his apology back in his face and tell him it was 32 years too late. But standing there looking at my father's face and seeing genuine remorse for the first time in my life, I found I didn't have the energy for anger anymore. Thank you for saying that, I said. It doesn't change anything, but thank you.
Can we?
He hesitated. Can we start over? I don't know, I said honestly. That depends on whether you actually want to know me or whether you just want to feel less guilty about cutting me out of your will. Hef flinched. That's fair. If you want to really try. You know where to find me, I said. But I'm not coming back here to play the role of the forgotten daughter anymore. If we rebuild this relationship, it'll be on equal ground or not at all. Understood, he said quietly. I walked out the door into the cold Colorado evening. My rental car was parked in the circular driveway, looking small and practical next to Victoria's Mercedes and my parents' BMW. I climbed in, started the engine, and sat for a moment, letting the heater warm up. My phone buzzed. A text from my girlfriend Jasmine, who was spending Thanksgiving with her own family in Seattle. How'd it go? I laughed. Actually laughed and typed back. Exactly as expected, and somehow still surprising. Flying home tomorrow. Miss you. Miss you too. Can't wait to hear everything.
Love you.
Love you too. I put the car in gear and drove away from my parents' house, watching it shrink in the rear-view mirror as it turned onto the highway heading back toward Evergreen toward Grandma's house, my house. I felt something shift in Sadim. The weight I'd been carrying for 32 years. The constant feeling of not being enough. The desperate desire for Miprin's approval. All of it began to lift. Grandma had given me more than a house and land. She'd given me proof that I was worth loving, worth choosing, worth investing in. Not because of what I could do for someone else, but because of who I was. 40 minutes later, I pulled into the long driveway leading to the estate. The house rose up against the darkening sky, its windows glowing with the warm lights I'd left on. The mountains loomed behind it, solid and eternal. I parked and sat for a moment just looking at it. My home. Not someday, not conditionally. Not if I proved myself worthy. My no, always, inside. I made myself a cup of tea and sat in Grandma's reading chair. My reading chair now, looking out at the forest beyond the windows. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Jason. That was intense. Are you okay? I smiled. Yeah, I really am. Victoria, I losing her mind. Dad's locked in his study. Mom's crying. It's a disaster. I'm sorry you're stuck dealing with it, I typed. Don't be. You were right about all of it. We've been terrible to you. Thanks for saying that. Can I come visit sometime? See the estate? I'd know you better. The real you, not the version we made up in our heads. I felt tears prick my eyes. I'd like that. Come anytime. Thanks, Sage. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving, Jason. I set the phone down and picked up the framed photo on the side table. Grandma and me from 5 years ago planting tulip bulbs in the garden. We were both laughing, covered in dirt, completely happy. Thank you, I whispered to her image, for seeing me, for choosing me, for giving me a place to belong. The house settled around me with comfortable creaks and sighs. Somewhere in the walls, the heater hummed to life. Outside, an owl called in the darkness. I was home. Not the home I'd been born into, but the home I'd been chosen for. The home I'd earned through love and loyalty, and 3 times weekly phone calls about nothing and everything. Victoria could have her inheritance. Jason could have his rental properties. My parents could have their perfect will and their golden child and their carefully constructed family narrative. I had something they'd never understand. The knowledge that I was enough, had always been enough, would always be enough. And I had a $3.2 million estate in the Colorado mountains that proved it. The fork had dropped, the truth had come out. And the overlooked daughter had finally completely, irrevocably come.